These are the 13 Los Cerros Trinitarios gang killers. In the dark heart of the city, where rivalries between street gangs clash, a tragic mistake would completely destroy the life of young Lisandro Guzman Feliz. Amid a gang war, the Los Trinitarios gang mistook Lisandro, aka Junior, for a rival. Without mercy, they began the chase to end his life. Junior ran through the city, engulfed in panic. Can you imagine what he must have felt? He tried to hide as best as possible in the confines of a store, but it was not enough. He was brutally dragged from behind a convenience store bench and subjected to unspeakable violence, stabbed multiple times with knives and a machete. Fortunately, 1 year later, justice was served. 7 of the 13 members were given life sentences, and the remaining 6, 12 to 18 years behind bars. Although the pain and loss endured by Junior's loved ones could never be undone.
My heart is torn for the family, for that little boy. He didn't deserve that.
How could such a senseless act occur? And why did it take so many lives to inflict such pain on an innocent child? If you found this unsettling, wait until you hear the horrific case of Simone Duran, a young woman with a bright future cut short by a disturbing event. The untimely death of Simone was a heinous act driven by revenge, and the perpetrators, Abel Gallegos, Alonzo Quintana, and Rene Rosales, are ruthless individuals fueled by hatred. What could push these people to commit such a brutal act? Well, Simone, the proud and innocent victim, cooperated with the police to identify Alonzo Quintana after a gang-related shooting. Little did she know that her brave act would ignite a spark of resentment in her assailants. Using false identities, they contacted her through social media, setting up a fictitious meeting that Duran attended. Unfortunately, Simone was kidnapped. According to various sources, she was raped by the 3 men in the backseat of a car and then shot multiple times. To cover their tracks at the crime scene, they doused the lifeless body with gasoline and set it on fire. Fortunately, this did not save them from being caught by the law. The trial presented 50 witnesses and a staggering 400 pieces of evidence. Alonzo Quintana, the mastermind behind the plan, faced a life sentence of over 160 years for first-degree murder and kidnapping. Abel Gallegos was sentenced to life in prison plus 163 years for his role in the murder. And finally,
this was a horrific crime. I am struck by the casualness in which it was committed, the absolute disregard for human life.
Rene Rosales was sentenced to 150 years in prison for his complicity. Justice? Many don't think so. The hell that awaits them is a meager consolation. Another victim caught up in gang violence is Christopher Dean, who became trapped in a deadly game of vengeance and retribution. In the city's dark underbelly, where loyalty is everything, betrayal can cost you your life. Dean, who had previous drug-related dealings, was invited to the house of the Gibson brothers, Xavier and Orlando. The mastermind behind the operation was his thought-to-be friend, Christopher Lockett. According to Lockett, Dean was a police informant, something they could not tolerate. Upon arriving at Gibson's house, Lockett quickly began to teach him a lesson. This was followed by a session of torture and brutality. He was beaten with a crowbar for over an hour and then sodomized by the entire gang. They shot him twice in the head. His body was left in the trunk of a car near a parking lot. As expected, justice came late. After 2 years, a jury found Lockett, Xavier, Clark, Rooks, and Green, all gang members, guilty of murder, manslaughter, engaging in criminal street gang activities, and other related crimes. Each of them received sentences that matched the gravity of their crimes.
I will start actually with count 2, which is the malice murder charge, and will sentence Mr. Lockett as a recidivist to life without parole.
Lockett and Clark were sentenced to spend the rest of their lives behind bars. Gang crime can be sickening and bizarre, but what happens when fame is thrown in the mix? Like Young Slime Life, a rap group and criminal gang. Among its members were rappers like Slime Life Shoddy, Unfunk, Lil Duke, and Gunna, all under the watchful eye of the gang's founder, Jeffrey Williams, aka Young Thug. YSL rose to fame in the underground world of Atlanta's music scene. They had it all: fame, money, and power. Now, how did they end up facing trial? YSL faced charges related to violence, racketeering, and drugs. 8 members, including Young Thug, were brought to trial. Many pleaded guilty, and after 7 months behind bars, some were released on probation. On the other hand, the accusations against Young Thug were more serious. He was charged with participating in criminal gang activity and furthering a criminal conspiracy through various illegal acts. One shocking allegation is that he rented a car used in the murder of a rival gang leader and provided shelter to those involved after the crime. The courtroom witnessed intense moments, from a drug exchange between Young Thug and Lil Rod to threats made by the judge against the family of one of YSL's members, Gunna.
I said I would try the case as expeditiously as possible, but at this point in time, I don't find any change in circumstances that would allow me to, or move me from changing my decision as to bond. And if anybody's in the gallery and you can't otherwise control yourself or otherwise you want to make any appropriate comments, then you can leave at this point in time. No harm will come or nothing else will occur. But if you remain in this courtroom and make any outbursts, I'll have you arrested.
After being sent to jail, Young Thug, from prison, released an album leveraging his criminal fame. Crazy, right? As of today, 4 members have been set free, while others still await their trial. 14 alleged YSL members will face charges for conspiracy to commit extortion and law violations. Some might say violent music can lead to violent crime, leading to cases like Keandre Duff, a gang member and victim of his own criminal ecosystem. Duff, barely 20 years old, had a past tainted by controversy. At 18, he was accused of murdering 17-year-old Keon Washington. Nevertheless, the charges against him were dropped due to insufficient evidence. No one knew it was just the beginning of a chain of events. Duff was said to be affiliated with the notorious gang Rock Life, which had clashed with their fierce rivals, the BOH gang, a deep-seated grudge. Keandre went to a block party with over 100 people. Laughter and music filled the air, but suddenly shots rang out. Chaos ensued. Duff was struck with a fatal bullet to the head. His life ended instantly. The rival gang had acted, seeking revenge for past transgressions. Later, the killer's trial followed. Tariq Jackson, an 18-year-old, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, armed robbery, multiple weapons charges, and surprisingly 12 counts of perjury. The verdict sentenced him to 15 to 40 years in prison for the murder and 2 more years for illegal firearm possession.
First off, I just want to say sorry to the family of the victim. I wish the situation would have played out like that. I never thought that my choices and decisions would have affected so many people. No mother deserves to bury her son. I was 16 at the time of the incident. I was young, angry, full of pride, caught in the streets and in the middle of gangs and all type of other stuff.
As a result, the streets turned into a battleground, and retaliatory shootings between warring gangs peaked. Young gang members getting caught up in crime is far too common, much like the case of Raymond Wood, a 17-year-old boy whose life was taken away by getting involved with the wrong people. It was nighttime when Raymond's body was found lying in the middle of a road, a victim of a brutal murder. According to investigations, Wood was killed over a drug-related issue. Authorities confirmed that Raymond was kidnapped from his home in Lynchburg, dragged into a car, and taken to Bedford County. Wood was gruesomely choked unconscious and then repeatedly stabbed with a knife in different parts of his body. His body, wholly mutilated, was discarded on the road, hoping to vanish. As we know, that didn't happen. Raymond Wood's body was found, and the culprits behind this heinous crime were identified, apprehended, and brought to face their fate in court. Christian Sanchez Gomez, one of the gang members, received a 60-year prison sentence after being found guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping. Meanwhile, Lisandro Posada Vasquez received life imprisonment for aggravated murder and kidnapping for financial benefit. His initial capital murder charge was amended due to changes in the law. Josu Correas Ventura faced the harshest trial, receiving 2 consecutive life sentences plus 10 additional years for aggravated murder and kidnapping for financial benefit. Victor Rodas pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, gang participation, and abduction, earning him 55 years behind bars. Juan Martin Hernandez faced charges of gang participation and 2 counts of felony accessory after the fact, receiving justice for his role. And finally, Miguel Angel Correa Diaz, known as the Reaper, was sentenced to life in prison for conspiring to commit murders linked to organized crime. There are still unanswered questions, and justice, while serving, only sometimes feels complete. These cases often shroud themselves in visceral mystery, and when we talk about visceral, nothing compares to Kenneth Lopez, a young victim of betrayal and resentment within the dangerous world of street gangs. What happens when bonds forged on the streets shatter, leaving devastation? At 18 years old, Kenneth Lopez met his tragic end at the hands of a former ally, Lee Rios, both involved with the notorious Latin Kings gang. Their friendship fractured, and high tensions led to a fatality as Rios coldly shot his former companion, Kenneth. The horrifying truth was that Kenneth was lured out of his own home, a pawn in a deadly game orchestrated by other gang members, sealing his grim fate. The court demanded justice. Lee Rios was found guilty of first-degree murder and multiple gun charges. He now spends his days behind bars, facing the consequences of his heinous actions. However, it did not end with Rios' conviction. Curiously, prosecutors dropped charges against 6 individuals with connections to the crime: Daryl Self, Valerie Medina, Nelson Rios, Maria Torres, Nathan Guevara, and Natalie Rivera seemed to evade punishment, raising national suspicions.
Lee Rios and Kenneth Lopez were both Latinx. Lee Rios felt disrespected by Kenneth Lopez. Lee Rios starts going around and telling everybody he's going to kill Kenneth Lopez. Lee Rios is the last person seen with Kenneth Lopez before he goes missing. Lee Rios then starts telling everybody that he killed Kenneth Lopez. Police are going to find Kenneth Lopez's body in an alley at 1470 Dwight Street, right where Lee Rios said he left it. They're going to find that he'd been shot from behind 5 times, just like Lee Rios said he did.
Nathan Guevara, only 21 years old, ultimately pleaded guilty to being an accessory to the murder, receiving a sentence of 10 to 13 years in state prison. The court recognized his involvement as significant, granting him a partial taste of justice. The others involved in this twisted tale remained relatively untouched by the legal system, leaving unanswered questions and a thirst for closure. Was justice indeed served, or did some dark forces remain hidden in the shadows? Having seen these cases, are you prepared to hear some that are even more disturbing?